Okay, here's another example from, I think it's P5 type question, where this seemed to be the hardest type on the practice quiz. So basically, here's another example of it. So what is the f of x? I can put it right in, right? F of x is 1 over radical x plus 2, right? And we also know that the whole thing is over h. There is only one thing missing, and that's f of x plus h. To find f of x plus h, you replace the x with x plus h. So now, instead of simply x plus 2, it's going to be 1 over, and it's going to have radical x plus h plus 2. So that's what's going to go here. This is a difficult one because you have common denominator as well as rationalizing as far as the techniques to evaluate this. So first thing is I'm going to multiply by the common denominator. You can always find a common denominator by multiplying the denominators. So I'm going to use those two multiplied together. So I'm going to multiply it by the radical with 3 terms, x plus h plus 2. And then that's going to be multiplied by the other radical, which is simply x plus 2. And I have the same thing on the denominator because anything divided by itself is 1. And if you're multiplying something by 1, you're not changing the value. Now, when I multiply here, two things are going to cancel. And what remains? The radical x plus 2. So you're left with radical x plus 2. Now when I multiply the second one, the ones with 2's are going to cancel, right? You may want to think of this as over 1. I don't know. Top times top, bottom times bottom. Anyway, those would cancel, leaving me what? The one with 3 of them, x plus h plus 2. In the denominator, you have the h, but you also have it times the other stuff, right? If you wish to think of this as being over 1, when you multiply the first one over here, top times top gives me this. And bottom times bottom, 1 times this radical, gives me just this radical on the bottom here. So you'd have x plus h plus 2. Those could cancel, and that leaves me radical x minus 2 for this thing. I just want you to see how I'm eliminating or canceling those terms. Anyway, at this point, we have to rationalize the numerator. So there is a conjugate. The conjugate of a minus b happens to be a plus b. So the conjugate of a radical minus a radical would be the radical plus the radical. In other words, you just change the sign in the middle. And again, a fancy form of 1. When you multiply a minus b times a plus b, I hope you're aware from algebra somewhere that it equals a squared minus b squared. Be extremely careful. If this is a, what's a squared? The same thing without the radical, with the x plus 2. Whenever you subtract, use parentheses. If this is b, what's b squared? X plus h plus 2. Now there's a lot on the bottom, so I may not write it all out yet. But let's simplify the top. What's x and a negative x? Well, they cancel to 0. 2, and when I distribute, a negative 2 will subtract off. When I take this negative times h, what's the only thing left on the top? Negative h. On the bottom, we have a lot of stuff, so bear with me. Times radical x plus 2. And then you also have it with the plus. Now what happens with these h's? Can they cancel? And that's going to leave me my final answer. Negative 1 over this times this, and then all of that's multiplied by the x plus h plus 2 with a plus now. And again, I think this is going to be the most challenging type for people on the quiz. So I wanted to make a second recording so you could have another example of it. I hope this helps. Good luck.